Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of B to Z. In today's episode, we're going to talk about how to make sidebars for your langstroth frames. This is what we're going to make today, and I'm going to show you how to do it right now. There's a big debate on how to whether or not it's actually even financially or economical to make your own sidebars. And that's a question you have to ask on your own. For me, I think it's economical, but then again, I'm a little different. So I don't spend a lot of time watching TV. I don't spend a lot of time doing other things or hanging out, but I find the time that I use to spend inside the garage or with my bees is a bit more economical in my point of view. To make this than to sit in front of a TV and waste that time away. So when I watch TV, I don't have anything to show for my time spent on the television. But when I spend time in the garage and I create things like sidebars, I can show for what I've done for my time. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and let's get to it. Alright, so the first step you want to do is you want to create yourself some sort of jig so that whenever you make these sidebars that they're going to be exactly the same all the time. Okay, so in this case I have a stop right here. I have it marked for sidebar deeps. It's actually 9 inches, 9 1/8 of an inch. I have it clamped down really tight so that if I bump into it quite hard, it's not going to go nowhere. Okay. Okay, the next step is going to be cutting the dado on the top of the sidebar, so the top notch. Okay, so we have a 7/8 inch dado set, and then we have the fence at 1/4 of an inch from the dado blade. And this will give us the thickness of the ear here. And to make this process easier, there's 2 things you can do. You can use a tenon jig, which I don't have, and I don't have much of a use for it other than this particular job. So what I do is you can run it along freehand, but then that gives you a little bit of play here. This is why the tenon jig will be good, because it keeps it nice and tight. Or you can make something like this. It rides along the rails of the table saw. You put yourself a 2x material there, because that's what you're going to cut. And then you glue that on, 2x, and you glue and staple your runner here. And this will push the stock over your blade, and it'll also keep it nice and flush against your fence so that it's not wobbling. Okay? So 7/8 inch dado blade, 1/4 of an inch from the fence, and then have some sort of jig so that you can make these cuts nice and smooth and perfectly cut. If you try to do it freehand, what's going to happen is that part of the ear is going to be thin and then some of it is going to be thick. so it won't be a consistent cut. So you want to have a way to be able to cut these precisely and exactly every time. You're going to mark one side. You're going to mark one side of your stock, and then always face that mark to the same direction. You want to verify your cut by getting a sidebar as a reference and lay it up against your notch and make sure that it's smooth. Okay, make sure that it actually matches up. So you can see, I'm not sure if you can tell from the video, but there's actually a little like 1/16, 1/8 of an inch we're going to be cutting off this whole section. Okay, so we'll go ahead and do this with all the stock now. The next step would be to cut the sidebar bottom notch. So we just finished the top notch right here. Now we're going to do the bottom notch. My fence is set up at 29-30 seconds. Okay. I have a 5/8 inch dado blade. Okay, and then once again, I have a jig to help us maintain the stock, the sidebar stock, up against the fence, and to also help me push the fence straight across over the blade. So every time that I set up for the sidebar bottom notch, I pull this jig out. I know exactly what dados to put in. I know how far exactly the fence is. And again, because I have this piece of stock right here stapled and glued to the jig, the fence position exactly is not really that important, because all I gotta do is just slide the fence right up against this 2x4 and we're set. But it is set for 29-30 seconds. Okay, so remember this mark that we made? We're gonna make sure that mark still stays on the outside. And we're gonna put it here on this outside, so that, again, we're gonna shave off a section about a 1/16 of an inch to 1/8 of an inch on this side, because the actual 2x is a little too thick. So we're putting the the same side of the stock up against the fence. So once again, now we're going to do the sidebar bottom notch. Once you have a couple of them cut, you want to test it. Make sure that your bottom bar is going to fit. And when it fits, you want to make sure it fits snugly. Okay, you want to make sure that it's going to be flush and that it's going to be snug. Same thing for the top, although the top is difficult to actually fit because it actually fits in between the ears of the top bar. So again, when you make your top bars, make sure that you test them to make sure that they're the same. So the best that we can do as far as fitment goes on this guy is just to line them up, line it up like this, and then with your fingers, make sure that it's nice and smooth. The next step is going to be to actually slice or rip your stock into the actual bars. That'll be the next step. So you set your fence to 3/8 of an inch. You may have to adjust a little bit depending on your gap here for your top bar. So make yourself a couple of test pieces if you want, or adjust as you go. You want to grab, after you cut one, you want to grab your bar and put it in right in through there. Make sure that it's nice and snug. You don't want it to be loose because then you're not going to have a good adhesion with your glue. If you have some made already, you can go ahead and just put it in. Again, you don't want it to be wobbling or fall out. You want a nice, good, strong bond when you glue it and nail it, or brad nail it. Okay, so 3/8 of an inch, and then you slice away. Make sure you use some push sticks. Once this stock gets kind of close to the blade and get really dangerous, so you want to make sure you save your fingers. This way you can actually pull your frames out of your hives. So save your fingers, use some push sticks. All right. So this is what a pile of 3 2x6x8 look like when you cut them up into deep sidebars. I'll continue this video here the next day. While we're at it, if you like the video, hit like. Also, don't forget to subscribe and comment down below. If you guys have any better ideas on how to do this, go ahead and post them down below. There are many ways to do this. This is my way of doing it. I got a lot of my tips from online forums, Facebook groups, and of course the one website that everybody knows about, the Beekeeper's Workshop. They have a YouTube video channel, and they also, I think they go by Michigan Beekeepers. So go ahead and check them out as well. So, all right, let's finish this up. Okay, so the next step is going to be to cut the width, the proper width to these the stock. So we have a little bit of an edge there, and if you remember, we offset the entire the top notch and bottom notch to the side so that we don't have to make two cuts. So we're just going to make the one cut at the edge to get off that excess. So you want to make sure you're cutting on the thick side of these notches. So each one of these notches should be a little bigger, and that's the side that you want to cut. Okay, set it off. You can see it's actually about the thickness of a blade, basically. So what I do is that I grab a one that I already have, and then place it between the blade, and then set the fence up against it, lock the fence in place, and I'll do a couple test cuts and then just adjust from there. So no jig required for this one. You could have a jig if you want to. You are going to be dealing with you know, hundreds of these guys that are going to be running through this blade. That's going to be, and maybe what could be done is a jig can be placed right here just to maintain the sidebar up against the fence as you go into the fence. Okay, as you go into the blade. Okay, so again, so you got your cut piece. So now you got your ears that are both even. We're going to grab your original, set it down on a flat surface, and make sure that it's nice and flush. Okay, there we go. There they are. Next step, one more step before we're completed. So the next step is going to be to cut these notches on the side of the bars here. This gives some bee space in between the bars so that bees can communicate between frames easily. It also helps with preventing them from completely propolising the entire frames to each other. So if you were to keep the bars like this, the bees would propolize the entire frame or sidebar from top to bottom, and it would be a bear to pry that apart. So you create these notches so that they can only propolize the top, and that also helps you keep bee space throughout the entire box. So in order to create these notches, I've created myself a jig, 3/4 inch dado blade. Then I have a jig that has rails that sits in the table saw. It also has a back part to keep it from moving front and back. And also, just with the sheer weight of this entire piece, it stays in place as well. I also have a little slice of piece of wood here, so that as the dado blade, you can't see it because it's within inside this bar here, these two pieces of wood here. As the dado blade cuts, it'll notch it so that I can continue across, and then once the sidebar hits this 2x4 here, that's where the notch will stop. This provides support so that as you're going across, you're not doing this. So it'll go across and then it'll be nice and straight and even. Now I place these two pieces of wood here to keep my hands out of the dado blade as I cut. So as we cut, my hand will stop in case if it was to slip, I won't hurt myself. So it goes in between the two pieces here, and we're done. Flip it around, do it one more time, and we're done. Okay, I'll give you a view of that from the top. This will slide in, dado blade would cut, it would ride right on top, it'll stop there. As usual, you want to slowly raise your blade until you get the correct amount of cut here. So you don't want to overdo it. So I usually start with the blade level with the jig, and then I'll raise it about a half a turn, and then I'll cut and check, cut and recheck. It's about 3/16 of an inch that I'm cutting away. For those that have some extra sidebars from purchasing, you can just use one as a template and compare. So raise your blade until you get the correct amount of cut. Okay, so that's how you create sidebars for the langstroth hives. Here's one from the manufacturer, and here is one that we just made today. We'll put them over each other. They're exactly the same. Only thing that's different is the holes. If you want to wire your frames if you're going to wire your foundation, then you may want to go ahead and put some holes. A couple hours worth of your time, and you can make some sidebars for your frames. Today we did a total of 3 2x8s, 2x6x8s, so that's 2-inch by 6-inch by 8-foot long boards, and we turned it into enough sidebars to create 140, 150 sidebars is what we made out of 2x6 by 8-foot long pine. If you guys liked my video, go ahead and hit the like button. Please subscribe to my video. There will be future videos on the other parts of the how to make and eventually we'll also have a video of how to put together frames.